Comic and author Lisa David Olson talks with us about improv, stand-up, and sketch comedy, and how she uses humor in everyday life. Lisa recently started a new podcast called Stranger Connections and self-published Laughs on Rye, an improviser's memoir. We connect with Lisa on family heartache, finding a comedic voice, and what is next for Lisa. I'm Amy, and he's Brent, and this is Lacrosse Local.
My name is Lisa David Olson. I was born in Lacrosse, Wisconsin, when the Grandview building was a hospital. Yes, I'm a little old lady. And how I got into comedy is through tragedy, actually. I grew up in a home with an alcoholic mother, and she was physically abusive to us. And so my escape was comedy from young on. So I would watch Carol Burnett and pretend that Carol Burnett was my mom. And I would escape through comedy and becoming characters and just doing scenes and writing songs and doing improv, although at the time I didn't realize I was. And that's how it started. And I never left it.
Recently, I read about how you released your book, Laughs on Rye. And you kind of touch on those sort of themes throughout the memoir, correct? How did that start? The idea of it kind of kick off?
One of those projects that rattled around in my brain, you have one like that. The listener has one like that. It's that project that someday I'm gonna. So I kept someday I'm gonna write about it. But why in the heck would anybody want to read about my life? I don't have initials after my name. I'm not big famous anybody. And then I stopped questioning myself and thought, I want to leave this legacy for my kids, my friends, whatever. And then I connected with an amazing editor who said, everybody wants to hear your story. And she coached me, and we would have weekly check-ins. So if anybody out there thinks that they're going to do a book and they don't feel it's valid, of course it's valid. Everybody's got a story, and you should be brave and share it. But you should also find that person who is going to check in with you on the weekly. At least I needed that. And I thought about it for years, and then I think it took me 5 months to write and self-publish.
Recently, talking to a lot of artists and musicians, COVID has been a big thing with them, either offering them an opportunity to slow down or an opportunity to work on projects. Even this podcast, which now, we've only done 40 episodes, but this time period has kind of given us some space to actually work on it, kick it off, and kind of tell these stories like you're talking about.
It's true. And you talk about it being a challenging time, and I've been exchanging the word challenging, adding creative. So I have a day job, and in that day job, I'm in City Hall, and the people out front at the DMV have created a walk-up window. Is that great on a rainy day? Well, you still get a title, and there's many, many places you can't. So very creative. In a challenging time, we've been forced to be creative.
Another thing I found out about you is your new podcast called Stranger Connections. What is that about?
I started to back out of Heart of Lacrosse. We've been doing September shows, 3 weekend runs for 2 decades. My kids don't even know what I look like in the fall. I go from the day job to rehearsal. And I finally said, I'm going to back out of that. And that was before the pandemic. We're still going to do small projects, but the big shows we're not going to. So I thought, I don't want to just chew on my foot all day like an animal in a trap. I have to have, and that was a beautiful analogy, I have to have a creative outlet. And I'm still writing. I'm writing a nonfiction book, but then I can't stop. I'm a natural interviewer. And I created Stranger Connections, where I have this project in my book you'll see, or if you follow me on Facebook, I do serious selfies with strangers. And that was my dare to myself. And I would walk up to a stranger when you could, be close to someone, and ask for a selfie. Double that up with, you can't smile. And all that does is make you laugh. So I challenge you to try that in your home tonight, where you can be close with people and try and do a serious selfie. You laugh before, you laugh after. I love weird stories, and I love to talk about pranks and dares because I'm kind of a queen of pranks. And so I have gathered some interviews with people. I've only done 2 episodes that I produced at this time. And it's like a guy who was a monk for 9 years. Why were you a monk? Why did you quit? I want to know all these things. And it was fun to talk to him. And then to find out what his prank or dare was. It was really fun. And the second gal I produced and put out there is Liz Murdoch, who talks to animals, even through the computer. You can set up a Zoom call with her and find out why your cat does this particular thing or your dog is that behavior. She will tell you. And she did that with my dog, and it was crazy. Believe it or don't, she told me something about my dog. And I've got a guy that I interviewed who at 9 years old in Russia gave himself up for adoption. And we go into that story and how that came about and whatever happened to his actual mom. So I want the quirky stories. I want the weird careers. I'm still chasing after this gal who walks on fire. Gotta find her again. But that's what I want. So if you've got those stories or strange careers, please get a hold of me.
You mentioned Heart of Lacrosse. It's a local improv comedy group. For people who don't know what it is, what is it, and kind of like what was your experience with it? How long have you been in it, and where did that lead for you?
Yeah, since 1999, I've been in it. I learned improv just by being forced to do it. Do you do improv, Brent?
I do not. No, I've never tried.
So you've never had a boss or a spouse? We all do it to some extent. We just might not step up into the spotlight. And being told, if I told you you're going to be a purple dog and I'm going to be this, it's just a great play thing you can do with your kids, and teaching the yes and mentality. You didn't say, no, I'm not a purple dog. And from there we can build. Well, same is true at work. If we listen to each other, build on what we hear. So I found this passion with improv, but that became sketch comedy and writing and song parodies and working with great people, Tracy Balls or Brad Williams. You might know the cast. And we still keep our Facebook page going. So I just became part of that troupe. I found my real, true family, because family is who you choose and who you trust. And if you work with a cast that does improv together and has your buns on stage, if you forget who you are and they just pick it up, that's family, that's trust. And that means everything to me. I feel fulfilled in the 20 years that I did put in, and I miss a lot of it. I also know when it's time to say, that was awesome, now what?
It seems like comedy is a big thing, or it seems growing to me at least. Maybe it's just seeing like Big Bluff comedy at Pearl Street Brewery, or just like the local bars and things like that. There seems to be larger audiences showing up. Do you find that with your different groups? And you do stand up as well on occasion, don't you?
I do. And I did that with Bluff Country Comedy too. And it was so fun because they're such a welcoming group. And if you've never done it before, connect with them on Facebook and get signed up when those things start picking up again. They're very welcoming. Try and do 3 minutes and just challenge yourself, because trying to do something like that you wouldn't normally do is that aha moment that raises your endorphins. It gets your heart going faster and makes you really know that, dang, I matter. And this is a big deal in this one moment of my 3 minutes. It's so fun. And comedy, we all seek it. And if you're like me on Facebook, all I post is, generally all I have is lighthearted comedy, puns, and just silliness, because I'm that escape. And I get people telling me how much that means to them. And I want to be that lighthearted place where you can go and look and just kind of roll your eyes like, oh, that was stupid, which is a great compliment to me.
You're talking about your podcast, some of your new ventures. What else is next for you?
Yeah, I'm writing a nonfiction book. It's a quirky gal who thinks she knows that there's a mystery going on her street. And my husband says, that's not a character, that's yourself. So whatever, I didn't ask you, Todd. So it's adding in some mystery, and there's going to be just a bunch of fun characters. And so writing in that is what's going on for me. And then just more of the Stranger Connections podcast. I still work full-time in the day at a police department. It's possible I'll use some of those stories, but twist them so they're my own. But it's never dull. We share 5 sons, so there's never a boring night, that's for sure.
You commented in the beginning about, almost like, why try? Why do people feel like they should be able to, do an interview like this?
You talk about sharing your story, and that's what came out of writing Laughs on Rye. It became something that I didn't expect. I had said, why would anybody read it? I don't have initials after my name. In fact, if you read my book, you'll find out I only went through 10th grade. I mean, I continued on to GED and some college, but for a long time, that was a big, fat secret. So why would anybody read it? And what happened was, my book signing, a man came up to me and had tears in his eyes and then held on to me. And it turned out I was stepping on his foot. No, that's my joke. No, he had tears in his eyes, and he came up to me and said how brave I was to share my story. And I just, in that moment, everything changed, because I wasn't doing it to be brave. I was doing it to just share. And my story in my book is all, you might hear about how my mother beat me when I brought home tadpoles in a jar. You might hear how she and I laughed our heads off wearing hats, walking through Kmart. I mean, it was a roller coaster, as everyone's lives are. And it's about forgiving and being better than that and not continuing that pattern. But in writing the book and having people tell me that they felt they could share their story and how freeing that was, that they felt they weren't alone, I don't need initials after my name for that.
So where can people find out more about you?
I'm 54 years old, so I'm only on the Face Place. Yeah, you can find my page on the Face Place. And it's under my author name, Lisa David Olson.
Lacrosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at Lacrosse Locals. Subscribe to the Lacrosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.